Welcome back, class. We're going to now spend some time talking about, and get a little more detail, I guess you could say, talking about Michael Porter's um, kind of that four segment box he's got. And the first we're going to talk about is cost leadership. And typically, when you think about cost leadership, or at least for a lot of people, you have some kind of first thoughts, and you think about inferior price products, poor quality goods, dismal customer service. Because if with for most people, I think it's kind of human nature. If prices are low, what's the issue with the product? And or you're asking yourself, if the price is too good to be true, so what's the catch? And I hear this a lot with a lot of people on taking these, I call them low cost, like guided tours, river cruises, um, the big cruise ships that cruise around the in the in either in the Mediterranean, or they're cruising down around the Mexican peninsula, or out um, in the sea, so or even up along the Alaska coast. And for these I'll call them cut rate, because their prices are significantly lower than the competitors. One of the things that I think about is, if I were to take a cruise on us, what kind of a product would I end up with? And I've talked to people that have been on some of the cut rate cruises, and some people say, well, you kind of get what you pay for, and others will say, I did it once and I'll never do it again. So I don't know. I think it's going to depend on personal choice. But one of the things they talked about in the text is, and I can vaguely remember when they were here in the United States at Yugo, that car that was mass produced in Eastern Europe and sent over here, and they sold, I guess, quite a few of them. But at the end of the day, they just it was an inferior product. Service was terrible. Couldn't get parts. I grew up on a dairy farm, and there were a lot of times that farmers, at least where I grew up, would, because you couldn't afford every piece of farm machinery you needed. So a lot of times you would swap farm machinery. And so when you're chopping silage for your cattle and you're blowing it up in those silos to store it, you always had to have a tractor sitting there, um, at the silo, at the blower, to keep the silage blown up the tube and into the silo itself. And we had a neighbor that um, got this brilliant idea, and I don't remember how he came up with this, but he actually bought, and I can't remember the name of the brand, but he bought a tractor from Russia, and it was, you know, good looking tractor, painted red. There may have been an underlying story there, but anyway, just red tractor. He brought it by, and we backed it up, and hooked it up to the silo blower. And when I got up and got ready to start the tractor, I'm looking at it, and all of the gears, all of the instruction, they're all written in Russian. And I remember looking at Harold and said, how do you operate this thing? He said, well, I'm not sure. He said, it takes some getting used to. He said, uh, and if it breaks down, I'm finding out I'm having trouble getting parts. But he says, while it runs, it does a really good job. And he's right. While it was running, it did an exceptional job. But um, he had he had a little diagram drawn out for me, and gave it to me. And it's that way I knew how to start it and how to kick it in gear, and you know I could shift the gears and I could move it if I needed to. But you know, and he kept talking about how much money he saved. He said I could have bought a John Deere or a Massey Ferguson. He said, or a International Harvester. And he said I must save so much money on this tractor. And after using it for 2 or 3 weeks, I mean, it did the job, but after using it for 2 or 3 weeks, I decided that I don't care how much money you save. I don't think I would have ever bought a tractor like that. But I guess where I'm trying to go with that is, cost leaders can be very successful, extremely successful. Look at Walmart. Look at Southwest when they first started. Look at Aldi's. Look at Lidl. I mean, you have a lot of cost leaders that are extremely successful. Cost leadership is a generic strategy that offers products or services with exceptional, remember, quote, you put that in quote, exceptional quality and features to a broad set of customers at a low price. And the text talks about Walmart, talks about Payless, talks about Little Debbie. Growing up, we had access to Little Debbie, you had access to Hostess, you had, I guess if you're on the East Coast, you had Tasty Cake. I think they originate in Philadelphia. But of all of those, Little Debbie's, I mean, they tasted okay, and they were priced a lot more competitive than some of your other types of cakes. And you'd get it, and you still see them, especially at Love's or Pilots or some of the truck stops or at gas stations. You'll see a lot of these. Now you've got an outfit called Bimbo that's selling a lot of these types of snacks and in these locations. But again, it's Little Debbie's carved out a niche because they were a price leader or a cost leader. And the characteristics of a cost leader, they manage to charge low prices and make a profit by being efficient. They're extremely efficient. If you think about, I think they used Waffle House as an example in the text. And if you've ever been to Waffle House, mostly people think of Waffle House, even though they're open 7/24, most people think of Waffle House as a breakfast joint. And you can go in and the menus, they've got a limited menu for breakfast. Their claim to fame is they make, and the waffles are really good. But it's bacon and eggs and ham, and you can get pork chops and steak with your breakfast if you want them. And a lot of the meals come with a waffle, and it's reasonably priced. Service is fast. Cooks are usually do a really good job preparing the meal, and the way that Waffle House makes a lot of their money, they're low cost. And if you ever go in a Waffle House, just watch how quickly they can turn a table over, how quickly they can get customers in, set them down, serve them the food, customers leave, next customer comes in, sits down. That's where it's talking about being efficient, and that's how Waffle House drives their profit. Sam's Club, I'm sorry, Walmart drives their profit because they can squeeze, and they talk in the text about the way they squeeze Procter & Gamble on a lot of the products. They have the ability to squeeze their suppliers in such a way that they can keep costs down. They can sell the products at a lower cost. They can pass that savings on to the customer. They're generating profit, and it's because of their efficiency. If you look at their long run average cost curve on Walmart, it's probably pretty impressive. They probably have economies of scale that a lot of companies wish they could attain. On the characteristics of a cost leader, they spend very little money on advertising, on market research, on R&D efforts. You'll see Waffle House advertised, along roadsides, and you'll see some signs. And as you come up to an exit, especially interstates that have, they'll have gas and lodging and food. Waffle House would advertise there, but you don't see them advertising like, McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King and Crystal Burgers. You don't see Waffle House advertising like that. Most cost leaders rely on economies of scale. Their long run average cost decreases as more and more units are added because they are reducing the cost per unit. They're driving that fixed cost down. If you can spread that fixed cost out over more and more units, your long run average cost curve is going to come down. And a cost advantage created when a company can produce a good or service at a lower per unit price due to producing the good or service in large quantities. Again, long run average cost is going to decrease the more units that you can produce because you're taking those fixed costs and allocating them across more units. Often it's larger companies because you have to have extensive infrastructure and you negotiate prices with the suppliers. Again, Walmart squeezes Procter & Gamble constantly on the products that they have on their shelves from Procter & Gamble. My guess is it's the same way with Goya or any of the suppliers that they have to store or to exhibit or to carry their products, you're going to have to get with Walmart's pricing guidelines, or they're not going to carry your product in the store. The advantages: efficiency makes them well positioned to withstand price wars from competitors. If you think about a price war between, well, let's think about here in Atlanta, you've got, think about Publix or Kroger's trying to butt heads with Walmart on a price war. It'd be a no-win situation for Kroger's and Publix. They're able to survive those price wars because they can survive on lower profit margins than some of the other companies can. They create barriers to entry for new companies and competition. It's difficult for companies to come in and compete at the cost level or the price level that Walmart can. They have a large market share, and they get that large market share because they have lower prices and, again, acceptable quality. And in this day and age, to me, depends on what I'm buying, but I can find most of what I want at Walmart, or again at Lidl, at Aldi's. I do like to go to Costco and Sam's Club for like organic milk and some things that I can't find at some of these other stores. But again, I'm okay with the low prices and acceptable quality. The profit margins may be slimmer, but spread across a large customer base, and it drives an increase in overall profits. Think about Henry Ford, and when he was making the Model T, he viewed it as he wanted a car that a lot of people could own, and he drove his profits by volume. His profits were volume driven. The disadvantages for this, the groups that are in the cost leadership, you need for higher sales volume can be critical disadvantage. Think about brand loyalty. There's certain people, and I don't care how many varieties of cookies that you carry at Walmart, and I don't care what the cost of those cookies will be. There's certain people that are going to go on Walmart and they want Oreos. It's either Oreos or nothing. And the same way with Coke. I mean, here in Atlanta, you're trying to buy Pepsi. It's you're looked at like you've got two heads. I mean, Atlanta is Coke capital. It is kind of odd that you've got outfits like Costco and Sam's Club, though, that have the Coke with soda machines up by the restaurants and the stores, and they have Pepsi products. Which here in Atlanta, I mean, I know it's negotiated at the national level on those two chains, but I don't know. It's weird that Atlanta's a Coke market, but you go into Costco or you go into Sam's Club and you're actually going to be consuming Pepsi products. Another disadvantage, they have to achieve high sales volumes, and it may require a significant fixed cost in production and distribution. And I think they talk about in the text, Walmart, one of the ways they do that is they try to strategically locate their distribution warehouses within a day's drive of their store. So if you look at the map on the distribution warehouses, you can see they're probably located and strategically, I don't want to say co-located, but within a day's drive of a lot of their actual stores. Costs are low because of minimizing advertising, R&D, and market research. It's a general environment. When you're talking about, remember, was it chapter 3? I think we talked about the general environment and the competitive environment, and that's what outfits like this that fall into this cost leadership. They are constantly looking at the general environment and looking at their competitive environment. And again, it goes back to Waffle House. You don't see Waffle House doing a lot of work on R&D. You don't see them advertising much. They've got a product, and I can't remember when Waffle House started. It may have started either after World War I or World War II, and I don't remember, maybe it's World War II. Um, and they pretty much, yeah, they tweak their menu sometimes, but there's not a lot of tweaking going on with the menu. And you going into Waffle House is like going into McDonald's. You go into McDonald's and you may not like the food, but it's pretty darn consistent. So if you don't like the food, you're going to be consistently disappointed if you go into McDonald's because um, that's one of the keys to that franchise is consistency. And it's similar to Waffle House. It's going to be consistent. They fry their eggs in grease and butter, and they've got hash browns, and they can slother them, and put all the stuff on them, and bacon and sausage and ham, and it again, it's not a very expansive menu, but they know what works and they know what people like, and they built their business based on that. And then the second kind of so we've looked at uh, cost leadership. Now we're going to look at on the just the differentiation side of the house, differentiation leadership, and the essence of this strategy is you get what you pay for. A generic positioning that attempts to convince customers to pay a premium price for its goods and services by providing unique and desirable features. They throw out, a lot of these types. They throw out Coleman camping equipment. They talk about Morton salt, and even the authors talk about, Morton salt. Salt is salt. But people see Morton salt and they see that blue container and they see that little girl walking there with, the umbrella. And that you're talking about brand loyalty. Think about Nike, think about Mattel and FedEx, and even talk about Publix in the text. It's, one of the few grocery chains in the United States that's employee owned. So, and if you go into, um, just in one of the Publix here in Atlanta area, prices are, to me, ridiculous in Publix, but they have a loyal following. I can go in there just about any time of day. They're open and the parking lot's packed. And they do. They have a bunch of employees running around and they're based on customer service and they're trying to help you get through the checkout line. And if it wasn't for the price component of Publix, it would be at least from my perspective, it would be a very enjoyable shopping process. It's just prices are a little steep. That you get higher price, you get higher quality, and you get better service. And that's with a lot of these companies that focus on differentiation, competing via uniqueness rather than price, and focused on a broader market. Again, go back to Nordstrom. Must offer unique features and be able to communicate the perceived value to the customers. Remember, perceived value. So they are selling you. They are selling you on the perceived value of their goods and services. Advertising and brand building is paramount. And again, to be in a differentiation leader, you've got to have brand loyalty, and that is a huge driver. The advantages are effective differentiation creates the ability to obtain premium pricing. Again, they have convinced people that their product is better than anybody else's. Profit margins and overall profits don't require attracting large numbers of customers. Again, think about revenue. Go back to the revenue formula. Revenue is a function of prices and quantities. If you can increase the price side of that equation, you don't have to worry so much about the quantity side to get to the profit margin you want, to get to the revenue level you want. If differentiation remains in place over time, then brand buyer loyalty are desirable because they are not price sensitive. You had people in Southern California and in the mall, in Fashion Valley at the mall, Nordstrom and Needless Markup were right across from each other. I mean, they were positioned at one end of the mall right across from each other, and at the other end of the mall, at least originally, was Saks and I think Bloomingdale's. So those, you had two anchors on one end of the mall and two anchors on the other end of the mall. And even though Bloomingdale's and Saks went out of business and closed the stores there, and I think maybe Macy's and somebody else came in, but you still got Nordstrom and Neiman Marcus down there on the other end of the mall, and they're butting heads with each other because their loyalty, their customer loyalty, they're not price sensitive. And when they talk about price sensitive, the extent to which a price increase makes a buyer less likely to purchase an item. You know, Coke again, go back, Coke in Atlanta. People in Atlanta love Coke, and it's not price sensitive to them. Brand loyalty limits new entrants to the market and basically increases barriers to entry. Go back to your old micro classes where you were talking about monopolies and oligopolies and monopolistic competition and competitive markets. You're talking about barriers to entry when it comes to monopolies and oligopolies. Not some, definitely not some in perfect competition. Maybe to a little extent in monopolistic competition, because there it's more you're differentiating products. In a monopolistic competition, you have that ability to differentiate. But yeah, barriers to entry. If you can create barriers to entry via brand loyalty, you can ensure that the company is going to have that competitive advantage going forward. Disadvantages: customers prefer a cheaper, less expensive option, and that's somewhat especially true now. The market with inflation and the deterioration in our real wage rate, it's starting to make a lot of people that might not have been price sensitive in the past, it's making them price sensitive now. Imitate the look and feel of brand products at a less expensive price. Competitors can imitate products and eliminate uniqueness. Purses, women's purses, leather purses, computers. Think about Yeti. Yeti's got, they had the market sewn up. I've got a Yeti that I drink out of, but you're getting more and more Yeti type knockoffs that are on the market. And actually now they're starting to talk that they can do as good a job as Yeti, if not better. My son, when he was in South Korea, bought my wife a purse. Like, I don't know, it was a name brand purse, and he knew it was a knockoff when he bought it one of the markets. I don't know, I think paid $20 for it. And the same purse sold, I can't remember, I think it was Chanel. Can't remember the brand, but anyway, the same purse, sold at Nordstrom or Neiman Marcus was, $800 or $900. But he bought it for $20. And my wife actually went into one of the stores, and one of the saleswomen said, "Oh, I really liked your purse. Did you buy it here?" Well, no, she didn't buy it there, but it had the logo on it, and it was the same black material. I mean, it's impressive the way they can manufacture these items. And had a friend at one point that worked for Wilson Leathers, and talked about going to China and going to the leather manufacturers, and even he was laughing. Said you would go in there and they'd have the same wear, the same production. Making Coach, they were making Cole Haan, they were making all of these upper end leather purses and things. And, the only difference was they were slapping some insignias on some and some logos on others. So that's what you run into as far as the disadvantage of being differentiation leader is, can your competition, how long can you hold on to that brand loyalty in a competitive market without your competition starting to imitate and starting to bring in additional competition? The third type is the focus cost leadership. And actually the focus cost leadership and the focus differentiation, both strategies try to attract customers in general. They appeal to somewhat broader markets. Focused strategies target a regular, narrowly, well, I guess that's the difference. So when you're talking about focus cost leadership and focus differentiation, it's a smaller type market. But if you're trying to compare them to cost leadership um, and differentiation leadership, they're getting a much broader market. So go back to the text and look at that page 151. If you start like me, starting to get confused as you go through this, you can go back to page 151 and it makes it crystal clear. So when you talk about focus strategies, they target a relatively narrow niche of potential customers. They're not using the shotgun approach and trying to get it out to everybody. It's a generic business level approach that involves targeting a relatively narrow niche of potential customers. So there's your focus. There's your advertising focus. Focus cost leadership. It's a generic business level strategy that requires competing based on price and targeting a very narrow market. It may not be the lowest price in the industry, but low price relative to competitors in a target market. Competitive prices and convenience. They talk about, they talk in the text about Redbox. I've never rented from Redbox. I'm going to Checkers a time or two, and theirs is drive-through only, so they don't have the expense of operating seating, available seating in an inside dining type atmosphere. Papa Murphy's, I've seen Papa Murphy's pizza advertised, but I've never bought any. And the nature of narrow target market varies. They're either talking about demographics, they're talking about sales channels. And when they were talking about demographics, again, I'm probably out of touch when the text talks about fashion and design and clothing. But they talk about Claire's and said it's jewelry for younger girls. And they are using demographics to target that. Sales channels, Papa Murphy's. You pick up pizza, you cook it at home. And one of the sales channels that Papa Murphy's is, I guess, competing in is they accept food stamps. They accept EBT cards, especially Medicare Advantage EBT cards or Medicaid EBT cards. And the trick to these EBT cards, it's my understanding, is you can use them as long as you don't buy prepared food items. So if I were to go in to, just here, if I had a card and I went into Publix here, I couldn't buy food off of their hot bar and get it to pay with my EBT card. But Papa Murphy's, because all they've done, they haven't prepared the pizza. They've just put the ingredients on it. You have to prepare the pizza when you take it home. And that's why they can hit this food stamp for this EBT card population. Checkers, there's 2 drive-through lanes. Stores are cheaper to build. No cost for inside seating. No utility costs, no labor costs. You don't have to worry about garbage disposal. People are drawing through the drive-through and taking everything home. They don't have to worry about the soda machines that are sitting there in the corner. People are just, drinking glass after glass. I have noticed that as a kind of an impact of COVID, now you're seeing, I don't want to say a lot of restaurants, but you're seeing several restaurants go into this situation where there's no inside dining. And just an example, the last time I was in Nashville and went to stop at that White Castle over there on Broadway, there wasn't any inside seating. You had to go through the drive-through, and the drive-through took forever, so I ended up going somewhere else. And then the last one is kind of in this category. It's the focus differentiation. It's a generic business strategy that requires offering unique features that fulfill the demands, again, of a narrow market. They're focusing on narrow markets. They, focus on, sales channels. They focus on demographic groups. You're seeing a lot of these. I guess they call them couples-only vacations or couples-only cruises, where they advertise it's for couples only or mature adults. I guess you can go if you're single or a couple, you just can't bring kids. So they're talking about that demographic group. Talking about rarity of a product, and they threw. I don't drink coffee, but they threw out a coffee Luwak, coffee brand that I thought this says $100 a pound or something. So again, it's a rare product, uh, but you need a niche market. And when you talk about sales channels, think of all of the uh, eBay and some of these companies that have gone and it's internet sales only. Um, think about Amazon. You're buying the stuff over the internet and they're bringing it to you. There's one they're talking about when they're talking about the coffee and the rare product. They also brought up old Rip Van Winkle Distillery, and they base their marketing its own strategy of scarcity. There's 7,000 cases in a year, 12 bottles to a case. So you can figure out how many bottles they're distilling and selling in a year. It's a cult brand. Same thing with a lot of your wineries in Napa Valley or Sonoma, California. There years ago, we would go to Silver Oak, and they had a fantastic Cabernet, but their deal was if you came to Silver Oak, you could only buy 2 bottles. You could come in, you could taste it. If you wanted to purchase it, you could buy 2 bottles. That was it. You actually had a black market set up outside the winery, and you could go in, you could buy your 2 bottles, and I can't remember then, it was like $60 a bottle, and you could come out, and we went in and bought 2 one time and came back in, and they were offering us $100 a bottle for them. They were people, and they had a case there. They've been buying people's wine as they came out the door. So again, when you're talking about focus differentiation, think about, rarity of the product, thinking about, scarcity. Think about Whole Foods. I mean, I make fun of Neiman Marcus and call it needless markup, but, for a while, Whole Foods, people called it whole paycheck because it is organic food. You've got Trader Joe's that has organic food. Think about Mercedes-Benz, their technology and safety. The advantages for this, focus differentiation, it's, charge higher prices, low cost structures. When you're talking about checkers, higher prices, you're talking about differentiation. Think about, Silver Oak. Think about old Rip Van Winkle that are driving those prices based on rarity. And both strategies can develop tremendous expertise about the goods and services. When I say both strategies, whether you're talking about focused cost leadership or focused differentiation leadership, you get intimately involved in the goods and services you're making. So you can determine ways to differentiate those. Limited disadvantages, you've got limited demand in a niche market. You've only got so much demand. Growth stymied, expansion can be difficult and costly once target market is well served. So you get that target market well served, how are you going to expand? How are you going to take that differentiated product and expand it to others? Niche market can disappear or taken over by large competition. And that's where they were talking about, I think the text talked about gun stores. Once you had Walmart with the ability to sell firearms in Walmart, it significantly impacted your typical gun stores that you saw. Market disintegration, from smaller firms with a more narrowly focused target market. So if you decide to work in an organization that is focused on this, leaning toward focused differentiation, or even the focused cost leadership, you need to make sure that company is going to be positioned to have that competitive advantage going forward. Because again, and they talk about it, you talk about it in your micro classes. Entrepreneurs can smell a profit. They are like a bloodhound when it comes to smelling profit. And if they see a market that has the opportunity, if they see a market that's got economic profits, they're going to jump in there and they're going to try to grab some of those economic profits. And that's what you have to be wary of in a lot of this, whether it's focused cost leadership or focused differentiation. You have to be extremely aware of who your competition is and what's the next step that competition is going to take. And with that, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about best cost strategies. See everybody in a few minutes. Thank you.